In the flicker of torchlight against stone walls, power is born not with crowns, but with shadows. The earliest rulers learned a critical lesson. Fear travels much farther than loyalty. As ancient drums echo across forgotten valleys, we find the rise of these dark royals begins long before written history. It starts in blood rituals, celestial signs, and whispered promises of divine authority. To rule absolutely required more than strength. It required myth. These myths were etched into temples, carved into bones, and passed down through forbidden text manuals, teaching how empires endure by convincing the many that the few were chosen by forces beyond challenge or comprehension. Low civilizations left behind more than ruins. They left blueprints of control. Cities aligned with stars, palaces positioned to dominate floodplains, and sacred centers built where geography could be manipulated to reward obedience and punish defiance. Ancient maps revealed trade routes and borders, enforced long before modern nations existed, suggesting early empires understood environmental cycles like droughts and floods. They used this knowledge to tighten their grip, presenting survival as a gift of their generosity. This ensured subjects never questioned whether their protection was real or manufactured through deliberate scarcity and calculated neglect, designed to reinforce dependence. As empires expanded, darkness traveled with them. Conquest was justified through stories of civilizing missions and divine destiny, while libraries burned and rival histories vanished, leaving only the victor's version intact. Archaeology now uncovers layers of erased cultures beneath imperial capitals, evidence of systematic suppression where languages were outlawed, gods were renamed, and memory itself became a battlefield. Every stone pulled from the ground threatens to expose how power was maintained not through enlightenment, but through removal, rewriting, and a silence enforced by law, violence, and ritual. Royal bloodlines learned to adapt, shifting from swords to scrolls, from temples to treaties. They embedded their influence into religion, commerce, and governance. Forbidding manuscripts circulated among elites, detailing cycles of collapse, climate upheaval, and revolt knowledge withheld from the masses. To prevent foresight, as ice ages ended and seas rose, empires relocated, renamed themselves, and claimed continuity, masking collapse as evil. They ensured their subjects believed them to be timeless, even as civilizations reset and buried uncomfortable truths beneath monuments designed to outlast memory. Today, satellites and scanners peer into the past, exposing buried cities and altered landscapes. Yet access often remains restricted, archives sealed, and discoveries The legacy of these dark royals did not disappear. It transformed. It flows into modern power structures that still depend on controlled history, selective archaeology, and managed revelation. And as we pull back from illuminated palaces and shadowed ruins alike, a quiet realization settles in. Empires fall not when they lose power, but when their stories are no longer believed. Did you know that power never truly disappears? It just changes its costume. Crowns and thrones became institutions, and the dark arts of influence moved into boardrooms, banks, and doctrine. Decisions that shape millions of lives are now made behind closed doors, without a single sword drawn in public. The ancient techniques of control didn't vanish. They evolved. Secrecy, after all, always outlives brutality. Forbidden texts describing population control, ritualized hierarchy, and how to manufacture consent didn't turn to dust. They resurfaced in coded language, quietly studied by elites who understand a simple truth. Stability depends on predictability, and predictability requires limiting what people know about their own past, their environment, and the cycles of rise and fall that govern all civilizations. Consider these ancient maps, once guarded in monasteries, show coastlines that existed before great floods and rivers that have long since vanished. This suggests advanced knowledge from eras we're told never existed. When modern archaeology confirms these ancient outlines under our deserts and seas, the reaction isn't celebration, it's containment. Why? Because admitting that advanced predecessors existed undermines the narrative of our own as climate change accelerates. It's forcing a reckoning. Melting ice and receding waters are exposing ruins faster than they can be hidden. Authorities now face a choice: transparency or control. Often, they choose control, sealing off sites, licensing the official story, and reminding us all that access to the truth is a privilege granted by institutions, not an inherent right. It's a silence, carefully curated and passed down through generations. This is why some of the most profound discoveries remain theoretical, debated endlessly in academia but never excavated. Uncertainty is safer than proof. When an artifact hints at a lost technology or a social structure that clashes with our own, funding dries up and careers stall. It's a clever way to enforce obedience. But digital technology is the wild card. Leaked satellite images and 3D scans circulate online, challenging the gatekeepers who once held a monopoly on knowledge. This creates a quiet, persistent tension between centralized authority and decentralized curiosity. Empires have always feared archaeology, not for what it reveals, but for what it equals. A buried city is the ultimate proof that all power is temporary, and that thought threatens legitimacy. So, royal lineages reinvented themselves through law and finance, keeping their influence without needing a throne. The methods of suppression also changed, shifting from overt force to bureaucratic delays and classified documents. It ensures the uncomfortable parts of our past remain abstract, so that we inherit pride without context and loyalty without understanding the mechanisms that shaped our world. We are now at the edge of a great revelation. We can feel the patterns connecting the dark influence of old royals to the modern systems that still benefit from our collective amnesia. As technology uncovers more than our institutions can absorb, the struggle intensifies. It's not a battle between past and present, but between control and comprehension. The question is, are we approaching another cycle of collapse, or are we on the verge of a great awakening? Empires rarely announce their own decline. They deny it, right until the very end. History isn't just a story we look back on. It's a script that's still being written, and we're starting to notice the patterns. What if the old royal families, the dark empires of the past, never really vanished? What if they just dissolved into the systems we live in today? Structures that look neutral on the surface, but are designed to reward obedience and silence dissent before it even has a chance to form. Think about it. Ancient lessons about surveillance, scarcity, and spectacle were never forgotten. They were just refined for the modern age, where ancient astrologers mapped the stars to predict futures. Modern technology maps our behavior to predict our actions. The rulers no longer need crowns or thrones. They just need access to the data. This way, control feels like a choice, progress feels inevitable, and the past feels completely irrelevant. But deep down buried truths are straining against the walls, demanding to be seen. The most effective form of control is when we build our own prisons. Believing stability requires us to ignore uncomfortable truths. Education simplifies complex histories into catchy slogans. Lost civilizations become tourist curiosities, not urgent warnings. We keep digging up evidence of past cycles empires that collapsed when the climate shifted. Elites who escaped blame and simply reset the system under a new name. But these discoveries are often softened, delayed, or buried. Why? Because admitting that past societies collapsed means admitting our own fragility, and fragility is bad for business, bad for markets, and bad for maintaining belief in the system. Progress without memory isn't progress at all. It's just repetition with better tools. You can feel it, can't you? That sense that something vital is missing from the official story. It's what drives our fascination with forbidden texts, leaked documents, and hidden histories. The idea of dark royals persists not as fantasy, but as a form of pattern recognition, connecting the dots of influence across centuries. As our own climate changes, exposing drowned cities and ancient settlements frozen in ice, time itself seems to be compressing. It forces us to compare ancient failures with our own modern denial. But those in power are quick to frame these discoveries as isolated events, ensuring the systemic warnings are never connected, never understood. Throughout history, great empires didn't just fall because of invasion. They collapsed when enough people recognized the script they were living in. Today, that recognition is spreading faster than ever. But suppression has also evolved. It no longer needs brute censorship. It uses endless distraction, constant entertainment, and an overwhelming flood of information to simply exhaust our curiosity. Because being overwhelmed is a quieter, softer form of control. As we scroll past images of ancient ruins and shocking revelations with the same numb attention, Power relies on our apathy as its final line of defense. A truth that no one pays attention to is harmless. It leaves the structures intact, the lessons unlearned, and the cycles ready to repeat again and again. The question isn't whether the darkness will return. The question is whether we'll notice the pattern before the story closes once more.